Imagine waking up one day and everything you once counted on starts collapsing. Your job doesn't fulfill you anymore. People you thought would always be there start fading away. You begin questioning things you used to believe blindly. It doesn't happen all at once, no. It's slow, like a quiet unraveling. You start feeling disconnected from the world you used to belong to. And just when you think this is the end, something ancient, something unseen begins to stir. You feel it in your chest, a pull, a pressure, a whisper that says, "This is not your destruction. This is your initiation." What if I told you that before any soul awakens, the universe will test you in ways that seem cruel but are actually the most sacred invitations of your life? These tests don't come with warning signs. They don't present themselves as obvious choices. They sneak in through your relationships, your identity, your comfort zones. They show up as breakdowns, losses, delays, doubts. And every single one of them is a mirror asking you one question beneath the chaos. Are you ready to remember who you really are? Because the path to awakening is not an escape. It's a confrontation. Not with the world, but with your own illusions. And the universe, in its infinite wisdom, will not let you skip the process. It loves you too much to let you remain asleep. One of the first ways the universe begins to test you is through isolation. Suddenly you feel disconnected from everything. Friends don't understand you. You don't fit in the places you used to feel comfortable. The conversations feel shallow. The noise of the world feels unbearable. You find yourself spending more time alone, not because you want to, but because everything else feels out of sync. This isolation is not a punishment. It's preparation. It's the sacred cocoon where the old self begins to dissolve. And in that silence, your real self begins to whisper. But the question is, can you sit in the silence long enough to hear it?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Most people panic in isolation. They try to fill the void. They rush back into the familiar just to escape the discomfort. But if you can resist that urge, if you can allow the loneliness to become solitude, something profound happens. You begin to hear your own voice again. Not the one conditioned by society, but the one that was buried beneath all the noise. You begin to listen, not to escape, but to understand. You start asking deeper questions. Who am I without them? Who am I when no one is watching? And that's the first step toward awakening, the rediscovery of your own inner frequency. The second test is loss. It could be the loss of a job, a relationship, a dream, or even your health. Something you thought was permanent suddenly vanishes. And you're forced to face life without the thing you thought you couldn't live without. At first it feels like betrayal. It feels like the universe is being cruel. But beneath that pain is an invitation to detach from false security. Because awakening requires emptiness. It requires space. And the universe will remove what no longer serves your evolution, not to hurt you, but to create room for the truth to enter. Loss exposes your attachments. It shows you where you've placed your worth, your identity, your safety. And the moment those things are taken away, you're stripped bare. Naked before the mystery. And in that nakedness, you have a choice, collapse or surrender. Surrender is not weakness, it's power. It's the willingness to trust that even in the void, something sacred is unfolding. And when you let go of what you were clinging to, you begin to receive what you were truly meant for. Another test the universe will throw at you is confusion. Your mind no longer knows what's real. Your beliefs start to feel shaky. The worldview you built your life on starts to crack. Things that made sense before now feel hollow. You feel like you're walking through fog with no direction. And the mind hates this. It wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants to feel in control. But awakening doesn't begin with certainty. It begins with not knowing. Confusion is sacred. It's the space between stories. It's where the old narrative ends and the new one hasn't yet begun. It's the void between identities. And if you can learn to breathe in that space, if you can stop demanding answers and start trusting the questions, you'll begin to feel something deeper than logic. You'll begin to feel truth. Not the truth you were taught. The truth that lives in your bones. And that truth doesn't scream. It doesn't rush. It just waits for you to get quiet enough to feel it. The fourth way the universe tests you is through repetition. Patterns repeat. Lessons return. The same kinds of people show up. The same triggers get activated. And you start to wonder, why is this happening again? But these are not accidents. These are sacred loops designed to show you what you haven't yet mastered. Because awakening is not about learning new information. It's about embodying what you already know. And until you integrate the lesson, the universe will lovingly send it back to you again and again. This repetition isn't punishment, it's precision. It's the universe saying, you're almost there. Look deeper. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about observing yourself. Can you see the pattern without judgment? Can you respond instead of react? Can you choose something different this time, not because you're trying to escape the pain, but because you've finally outgrown it? Every repeated trigger is an invitation to reclaim your power, to stop abandoning yourself, to become the version of you who no longer needs to repeat the cycle to feel safe. And the fifth test is perhaps the hardest, the test of stillness. Nothing happens. No signs. No synchronicities. No breakthroughs. Your prayers seem to go unanswered. Your intentions feel ignored. You begin to wonder if the universe has forgotten you. But this is the most powerful part of the process, the void, the space between the seed and the sprout. The moment when everything is happening beneath the surface, even though you can't see it. Stillness is the universe asking you, can you trust me even when you can't feel me? It's asking for your faith, not blind faith, embodied faith. The kind that says, even in the silence, I believe I'm being guided. Most people give up in the void. They quit. They settle. But if you can hold your vibration in the stillness, if you can keep showing up for your practices, your healing, your inner work, something will shift. Not outside of you, within you. And that shift is what changes everything. Let me ask you something. What if the universe isn't testing you to break you, but to reveal you? What if every delay, every detour, every disappointment is a mirror showing you where you still doubt your own divinity? What if these tests are not obstacles, but initiation's sacred checkpoints that ask, are you ready to live as your soul, not your story? So many people want awakening without the initiation. They want the light without facing their shadow. They want the gifts without the refinement. But the universe doesn't work that way. It will test your humility, your patience, your authenticity, not because it's cruel, but because it's precise. It knows what must be burned away for your essence to shine through. And it will keep asking until you answer not with words, but with your vibration. And the most mystical part, these tests don't stop after awakening. They deepen. They become more subtle, more sacred. Because awakening is not a destination. It's a way of life, a way of seeing, a way of being. And the more you walk this path, the more you realize that every test is actually an invitation to trust more deeply, to love more fully, to live more freely. There comes a moment on the path where the intensity of your inner world becomes undeniable. You can't go back to who you were, but you're not yet sure who you're becoming. You're in between stories, identities, lifetimes. And in that space, the universe offers its next test, one that doesn't show up in lightning bolts or dramatic loss, but in the mirror of your own self-worth. This is the sixth way the universe tests you before awakening, by showing you your own resistance to receiving. Not just receiving love or abundance, but receiving yourself, your truth, your power, your divinity. Before you awaken fully, the universe will place opportunities in front of you not to bless you, but to expose you. Opportunities that reflect your potential, relationships that see your worth, moments that call you to step into your light. And then it will ask, will you accept it? Or will you shrink? Will you sabotage? Will you choose what's familiar over what's true? This test isn't about how much you can manifest. It's about whether you believe you're worthy of what you've already called in. Receiving is one of the most difficult spiritual muscles to develop, because to truly receive, you must expand. You must let go of the identities that were built in survival. You must allow yourself to be seen, not through the masks, but through your essence. And that kind of visibility is terrifying because it means you can no longer pretend. You can no longer hide behind the old story. You can no longer say, I'm not ready. The universe is saying you are. But are you willing to believe it? The seventh way the universe tests you before awakening is through judgment. Not from others, but from within. When you begin to see yourself clearly, all the parts you've rejected start surfacing. The shame, the guilt, the unworthiness, the moments you betrayed yourself, the versions of you that you've tried to forget. They all come forward, not to haunt you, but to be healed. And the universe will ask, can you love yourself, even here? Even in this? This is the test of radical self-compassion. It's easy to love yourself when you're aligned, glowing, and clear. But can you love yourself when you're messy, confused, and full of doubt? Can you sit with your shadow and not try to fix it, but hold it? Can you forgive the parts of you that didn't know better? Can you see your past not as a failure, but as a sacred preparation? Because until you love the version of you that was lost, you will never fully embody the version that's been found. This test is brutal because it's intimate. It's not about what you show the world, it's about what you show yourself in the dark. Most people try to bypass this part. They jump into spiritual performance. They wear the costume of enlightenment. But the universe doesn't care how spiritual you appear. It cares how honest you are. And honesty begins with admitting where you've abandoned yourself, where you've judged yourself, where you've stopped showing up for your own soul. And that leads us to the 8th test, the final and most sacred one: surrender. The universe will bring you to a point where nothing external can save you. Not your knowledge, not your tools, not your rituals, not your teachers. You'll be stripped of every crutch, every strategy, every certainty. And in that emptiness, it will ask you the ultimate question: will you trust me? Will you let go of control even now? Will you fall and let yourself be caught by something greater than logic? Surrender is not giving up, it's giving over. It's choosing alignment over attachment. It's choosing presence over prediction. It's choosing trust over tension. And it's terrifying, because every part of your ego will scream. Everything you've built your identity on will feel like it's dissolving. And that's exactly what needs to happen. Because awakening isn't about becoming more. It's about becoming less of who you're not, so you can finally be who you are. In surrender, you stop chasing signs. You stop begging for answers. You stop trying to force clarity. Instead, you become still. You open. You listen. And in that stillness, something ancient begins to move through you. Not from the mind, but from the heart. Not from effort, but from essence. You begin to feel life living through you. You begin to realize that you were never meant to carry it all alone, that you were never disconnected, that your soul has always been in communion with the divine. And in that realization, the tests begin to transform. They don't disappear, they deepen. But now, you meet them with a different frequency, with reverence, with grace, with a quiet knowing that everything is working for you, not against you. That every challenge is an initiation. That every breakdown is a sacred blueprint. That every no is a hidden yes to something your soul has been calling in since before you were born. So what happens after you pass these tests? You don't receive a trophy. You don't get a certificate of awakening. What you receive is yourself, your true self. The one who was buried beneath years of programming, fear, and performance. The one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who doesn't chase love because they are love. The one who doesn't seek freedom because they live it in every breath. And from this place, life begins to respond differently. Not because the world has changed, but because your vibration has. You start attracting people who speak your soul's language. You start creating from a place of inspiration, not obligation. You begin to walk through life with a quiet confidence, not the kind that needs to be seen, but the kind that sees. You see the sacred in the ordinary, the divine in the mundane, the infinite in the now. Let me ask you something that most people never consider. What if the tests you're facing right now are not meant to delay you, but to prepare you? What if your resistance is the very doorway to your liberation? What if the things you're clinging to are the very weights keeping you from flying? Are you willing to let them go, even if it means stepping into the unknown? Because that's what awakening asks of us. Not comfort, not certainty, but courage. The courage to lose who we thought we were. The courage to walk alone when no one understands. The courage to trust the whisper in our chest over the noise in our mind. The courage to say, I don't know what's next, but I know I'm ready. And when you say that, when you truly mean it, the universe moves. It aligns. It opens doors. It rearranges reality to match your frequency. You are not being tested to be punished. You are being tested to be revealed. Every challenge is shaping you. Every delay is refining you. Every trigger is healing you. And every moment of surrender is bringing you closer, not to some external finish line, but to the truth of who you've always been. So don't run from the tests. Don't resent them. Honor them. Because they are the fire that forges the awakened soul. They are the sacred checkpoints that mark your return, not to something new, but to something eternal. There's something no one tells you about the final stage of awakening. It's not a grand celebration. It's not fireworks or a parade of angels welcoming you into the light. It's quiet, almost anticlimactic. You wake up one day, and instead of feeling like you've arrived somewhere new, you feel like you've come home to something ancient, something that was always inside you. The noise has faded. The resistance has softened. And you realize you're no longer fighting the current of life. You're flowing with it. This is what happens when you've passed the tests. You don't become someone else. You become who you've always been beneath the fear. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to awaken is often the moment you do. Because now it's not about chasing a state, performing a role, or proving your progress. It's about presence. It's about alignment. It's about choosing truth in every breath, even when no one's watching. Awakening is not a destination. It's a frequency. A way of seeing, of being, of loving that doesn't depend on external validation. And once you've passed the universe's tests, you stop needing proof. You become the proof. You begin to move differently in the world, not with arrogance, but with clarity. Not with pride, but with peace. You no longer need to control everything, because you've seen what happens when you let go. You've tasted the wisdom of surrender, and now it flavors your decisions. You say no with love. You say yes with integrity. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You listen more, not just to others, but to life itself. Because now you know everything is speaking. Every moment is sacred, and you are finally still enough to hear it. The people around you may not understand what changed. They may say you've become distant, quieter, harder to reach. But that's only because you've stopped performing. You've stopped leaking your energy to be liked. You've stopped bending your truth to fit into molds that were never made for your soul. And that shift creates distance, not because you're leaving others behind, but because you're finally standing in your own lane. And from there, you can lead not by force, but by example. Not by telling others what to do, but by becoming a living invitation to truth. This is when you begin to serve not because you're trying to be good, but because love now moves through you effortlessly. You recognize pain in others because you've walked through it. You hold space not from superiority, but from shared humanity. You no longer need to fix people. You just need to be with them, fully present, fully alive. And your presence becomes medicine. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. This is what the universe was preparing you for all along. Not a title, not a platform, but a heart strong enough to love without conditions. And now you understand the tests were never random. They were precision-coded for your evolution. Every loss carved space for grace. Every silence taught you to listen. Every delay rewired your trust. Every rejection realigned your path. Nothing was wasted. Everything was sacred. Even your darkest nights were part of the choreography. Because the universe doesn't test you to see if you'll break. It tests you to show you that you're unbreakable. So what does life look like after awakening? It's not perfect. Challenges still come. Emotions still rise. But your relationship to them changes. You no longer identify with the storm. You become the sky. You no longer chase healing. You live in harmony with your own cycles. You feel safe inside yourself, and that safety allows your soul to expand. You become more intuitive, more creative, more magnetic, not because you're trying, but because you're aligned. You begin to attract what matches your truth, not your wounds. Opportunities find you. People resonate with you. Synchronicities guide you. Not because of spiritual tricks, but because your frequency is clear. You're no longer broadcasting lack. You're anchored in sufficiency. You're no longer trying to be seen. You're seeing yourself, and that changes everything. But perhaps the most beautiful sign of passing the universe's tests is this: you no longer fear the unknown. You welcome it. You walk into the mystery with open arms. You trust that even in the chaos, there is order. Even in the silence, there is guidance. Even in the endings, there is rebirth. You don't just believe in the divine, you live in communion with it. Every breath becomes a prayer. Every moment becomes a portal. And your life becomes the ceremony. Let me ask you something most people never pause to consider. What if your entire life has been a sacred training? What if every heartbreak, every disappointment, every collapse wasn't a detour, but the exact path your soul needed to remember itself? What if the pain wasn't a mistake, but a messenger? And what if your awakening isn't something you achieve, but something you allow? You've passed through the fire, and you've come out gold. Not because the fire didn't burn, but because you let it refine you. You let it strip away the false so the real could rise. And now here you are, not as a finished product, but as a living process. Your soul in motion. A light that doesn't flicker in the wind because it was born in the dark. You are not who you were. And thank the universe for that. You are softer now, but stronger. Wiser now, but humbler. Clearer now, but quieter. You've touched something eternal, and now it lives in your eyes, in your voice, in your presence. You've become the kind of person who doesn't need to preach. You just need to breathe. And your very breath reminds others of their own divinity. So if you're watching this and wondering whether you're being tested, take heart. If everything is breaking, let it. If nothing makes sense, trust that it will. If you feel like giving up, don't. You're not being punished. You're being polished. You're not being delayed. You're being prepared. And the moment you surrender to the process is the moment the process begins to serve you. It won't look like you imagined. It will be better because it will be real. It will be you. The you that doesn't need to prove, perform, or please. The you that knows how to sit in silence and still feel full. The you that trusts the whisper over the noise. The you that walks as truth, loves as presence, and lives as light. This is what the universe wants for you. Not comfort, but courage. Not answers, but awareness. Not escape, but embodiment. And when you're ready, when you faced the fire without flinching, listened to the silence without running, and loved yourself without condition, you'll realize something astonishing. The tests were never outside you. They were always inside, and so was the key.